What's good, everyone? Matt here from UK Nets Fans, and I'm joined by Aidan and Cammy Anderson for another episode of BK to UK, the British Brooklyn Nets podcast. Today is Monday, the 13th of December, and we're going to be chatting about a report in The Athletic by Shams Charania regarding Kyrie Irving potentially returning to play, KD getting fined for being a potty mouth, talking about workloads, recapping the past week games against the Mavs, Rockets, Hawks, and Pistons, and much, much more. Make sure you're following us on Twitter and Instagram at UK Nets Fans, the pod itself on Twitter at BK2UK Pod, and check us out on YouTube where you can watch back all of our episodes. But with that out of the way, time to get into it. Now, normally, a little bit behind the scenes on BK2UK. Sometimes we record on a Sunday night, sometimes we record on a Monday night. We were thinking, coming yesterday, there's not much Nets news going on, but what a difference 24 hours makes. Within a couple of hours of us deciding to record the pod, Shams releases a report in The Athletic titled Optimism for a Kyrie Irving Return, in which he says there is renewed optimism around Irving returning to the Nets this season, sources with knowledge of the situation tell The Athletic. It remains unclear whether Irving's potential return this season would come via vaccination to meet New York City's COVID-19 vaccine requirement, or by Brooklyn opening the door for him to play road games and practice at home. But sources have indicated a renewed belief that Irving could play this season after all. He goes on to say, Nets players and coaches want to have Irving rejoin the team as soon as possible. In recent weeks, Irving and Kevin Durant, his co-star and close friend, having had increased communication about his fit on the team, breaking down the games, and about life in general. There appears to be an increased level of enthusiasm between the two superstars. So last week, Steve Nash said, that they're just focusing on our group. And getting better every day. And if we get the gift of Kyrie Irving's return, we'll be ecstatic, but we can't count on it. The Nets announced on October the 12th that Irving was going to sit out all team activities until he fulfills the city's vaccine requirements. And New York City's vaccine mandates aren't changing. We know that. So Shams ends it by saying, if no resolution occurs for Irving to rejoin the team by February the 10th trade deadline, the Nets could be faced with a decision to make on potential offers they continue to receive. Several teams have placed calls into the Nets since October, but Brooklyn has not engaged. So that's a ton of information, but I thought I would just get it all out there. Lads, I'll come to you guys. What do you make of it? And, what do you think is going to happen?
I'd say it's certainly the most positive update we've had on Kyrie Irving since the beginning. And Nets fans have rightly been excited about that announcement coming out today. And rightly so. They've had a tough time of it when it comes to media announcements recently. And it's nice to have a bit of positivity, especially obviously after KD's historic performance last night, leading into this morning with news like that. There is a good feel-good factor around the Nets today, and it is nice to have. And at the same time, I can totally understand that people maybe don't want to get too excited after being disappointed around Kyrie Irving for a number of months now. But I see this update as extremely significant, regardless of how vague it is at the moment. But I think in the next week or so, it could be even more significant. I think it's going to be extremely interesting to see what comes out from the media. I think you just need to break it down. Shams is a top 2 NBA reporter in the league, obviously next to Woj, and he's got a huge amount of contacts within each organisation, be it players, be it officials. And yeah, he's definitely had a lot of exclusives on the Nets in the past. They maybe have tended to lean towards Woj potentially via the front office in the past, but Shams has had plenty, and you just need to look back to show to see how much he's had on the Nets. Kind of the first one, the exclusive. So I don't think he reports this if there's no significance in where it's came from, and it's either came from Kyrie, KD, or the Nets themselves. I don't see it coming from a random source somewhere. This is definitely from an official, I think. And personally, me, guys, the last couple of weeks I've been set on trading Kyrie. I've I've actually not been in the camp where I'd rather trade him sooner rather than later. It's not been a let's wait to the trade deadline and see where we are. But if this has any indication that Kyrie's stance on getting the vaccine could change, then I think it does change everything. Obviously, he's always promoted himself as not being an anti-vaxxer. He's always tried to make that clear when he has came out with things, that it's not that he's against the vaccine, it's against other things, the mandates and whatnot. So this morning at 8 o'clock, if you asked me, I still would have said trade Kyrie Irving as soon as possible and try and recoup what value you can right now. But I do think this update changes everything. And I think there's a good chance that we do see him in some shape or form. And I really do hope it's the fact that he's considering getting the vaccine. But yeah, in terms of what the Nets do, I do think they do move him. They've probably got their own deadline, be it the actual trade deadline or a date where they've said, right, if we get to here and nothing's moved, then we need to do something. Because obviously we got Kyrie as a free agent, and it's not, if we do lose him, it's not as if it's like James Harden where we've given up all these players. But there is value there. Obviously, we had to give up D'Angelo Russell to sign Kyrie Irving. So there is like that price there that we've had to lose in the past to obviously get Kyrie Irving in. So it would hurt if we ended up losing him for free. So I do agree with that in the article, that they will get to a stage where they do think they can change him, but that they'll need to make a change and potentially trade him. Obviously, we heard Dallas and the Clippers being mentioned as people who have maybe made field calls to the Nets in the last couple of weeks. So they will be listening, but let's face it, as Nets fans, as Nets as an organisation, if there's hope that Kyrie can get the vaccine, then I do think that they will always back Kyrie Irving, and hopefully this is a sign of things to come and we see Kyrie on the court soon. I couldn't believe it when I saw it this morning. I think it's really, really significant, and we'll just need to wait and see what happens in the next few weeks.
I'm in the kind of same boat as you, Aidan, in that it is a very kind of positive update, but at the same time, I'm still questioning where it's come from. Like you've said, has it come from Kyrie? Has it come from front office? Has it been KD? Where's this actually come from? A point that I'd seen a lot of other Nets fans raise was the fact it was players and coaches are kind of excited to have him back or want him back. There was no mention of management, so does that suggest it came from Kyrie's camp and it's we'll put a bit of pressure on the management and make out like everyone wants him back? And yeah, it's tricky because I just don't know what you can really say. I can't see him getting the vaccine as much as it would maybe suggest it is, because obviously you don't have optimism, you don't have smoke without fire and all that. But yeah, it just doesn't make any sense. I can't see us kind of making any kind of U-turn on the decision we made. We could have let him play, but if we were to then make a kind of U-turn and then let him play in the road games, yeah, it doesn't make any sense to me. It would make the organisation to look a bit foolish and a bit weak if they've went, right, yeah, we're going to make this stance, but now you say you want to come back or whatever, but we'll just fold over. And yeah, it doesn't really sit right with me. I think there's still a lot more to come out of this. It's an initial report. Still, yeah, like I think you described it best, just saying it's vague, Aidan. It's a week or two's time, I think we'll really see the outcome of this report. This could just be one of those where it's maybe the Nets putting out feelers to suggest, yep, he's wanted. Does that maybe try and increase his trade value a little bit? Maybe look at it from that perspective. I really, really don't know. There's so many angles you can look at it, and with it being Kyrie, it's typical that it's so misunderstood and you really don't know what the situation is. But I just hope whatever the outcome is, we make the right decision for the team, whether that is Kyrie returning. As much as, like I'd say, it might make the front office look a bit foolish. Nobody could say they wouldn't love to see Kyrie back in a Nets uniform. And if Kyrie can play, you're going to take that all day long. But yeah, I think it's a case of waiting and seeing what's going to happen.
So if I had to put you on the spot now and say, do you trade him? Do you wait on him? Where do you come on it, Cammy?
Trade him.
Nice.
You want to wait, given the player he is, given the connection he's got to the city and the team and all that. But yeah, how long do you wait? Like Aidan says, is there a deadline there, or are we just kind of making things up as we go along? I think if there's teams interested, you bite their hand off, because that interest might not always exist. You could tell them, nah, we're not interested. And then in a few weeks' time, you go, yeah, maybe we should have picked up those calls. And then you're kind of stuck with him. You can't use him because you've decided you're not wanting to use him. He's not then going to want to sign a new contract. He's going to walk. And yeah, like Aidan says, he's a free agent, so we're not losing anything. But then you've got a Kyrie Irving-shaped hole to fill, even if I've not had him here to begin with this season. But it is a considerable hole to fill. I'm not too sure who the kind of available free agents are. Obviously, we'd have pretty much a max contract available. But then, is it the same as Kyrie? It's something that's so up in the air and so, just so kind of cloudy at the moment. But hopefully we can get some clarity soon.
Yeah, fingers crossed. It's one of those things where when stuff's so new, breaking like news like this, it's just like we're just dying to see where the cards fall. But I think in the way I read this is that the bit that was most interesting to me was when it said about he's been in recent weeks, they've been he and KD have been chatting, increased communication about his fit on the team and breaking down games. So just like you guys said, it's just after seeing us demolish, KD going for 51 and battering the Pistons and stuff, which obviously we'll get on to later. What are we, 19-8? It must be pretty good, even as strong-willed and, dare I say, stubborn as Kyrie is. It must be a bit annoying to see a team that you've decided not to play for go off and have the best start to a franchise season ever. First in the East. We weren't really topping the table last year very often, if at all. It was always the Sixers that were battering it last season. So to come in and, be the best Nets team that there's been since he's been here and he's not played might sort of grate on him a little bit. So in my head, I think this is Kyrie going up to KD and being like, look, you're doing great, and you're in MVP talks, but you're averaging 40 minutes a game, man, and we could ease off a little bit. Imagine adding me and all this kind of stuff, and they're chatting about basketball. So I think maybe it's come from Kyrie, and this is where like the leaks and stuff come in, and I'm not really sure. There are some people that say if it comes from Shams, it's a leak from somewhat a player. If it comes from Woj, it's a leak from the team. I'm not quite sure who's on what team, but it could be something from Kyrie's lot to be like, look, Kyrie wants to play. And it's the big bad Nets organization that are saying, no, you can't play, even though he's allowed to play road games. So maybe it's a little bit of pressure put on that way to kind of make the front office go, nah, you know what? Fine. Let's get you back and get this chip. But equally, I understand what you guys are saying about if they do that, it looks like, the whole no one man is bigger than the team thing just goes out the window. So it's incredibly difficult to call. If I'm gonna put my colours on the mast, so basically there's three things that are going to happen, right? Either he gets the vaccine and he comes to play full time, the Nets let him play road games and he's a part-timer, or the Nets stand firm and he's either traded or whatnot. I actually think he's going to end up coming back and playing road games. That's what I think is going to happen. I don't know what the fallout of that will be, but if it results in the Brooklyn Nets winning a championship, then, and I get to see Kyrie Irving play basketball, I don't give a monkeys. So that's that for me. It's going to be very interesting to see this one unfold, as you guys have said. But yeah, more on that as it unfolds. So that's like the main chunk of news, like I've said, but it's only just come out. So on to other things. How much money is an adequate amount of money to charge someone for shouting back at a fan? Because Kevin Durant got fined $25,000, and Katie's obviously a multi-millionaire on the court and off the court with his business ventures and career earnings and whatnot. But he got fined $25,000 for using profanity towards a fan. Do you think that's warranted? Do you think that amount of money is too harsh? What do you guys think?
I think a 25k fine for what is essentially a word is a bit steep. To be honest, I really couldn't care. It's a word. It probably happens every single night in games, but because it's KD, it's more high profile. It's been mentioned, and cameras are always on KD. So if he says something, he's going to be caught. Yeah, if it was a Bruce Brown or DeAndre Bembry, with all due respect to them, I don't think cameras would really be clambering for them saying something to a fan. I can understand why the NBA fined them. They'll not want fans coming to stadiums and getting swore at. Like, yeah, I get that, but it's nothing to me. KD's not going to be crying over losing 25k. By the time that quarter finished, he'd probably made twice as much. So, yeah, it's nothing for me. It's nothing that I'm going to concern myself or lose sleep over much. Like I'd imagine KD's probably just laughing about. It's nothing. I'm really nothing knowledgeable or exciting or anything much to add to this. It's nothing, and yeah, just too much money.
Yeah, I'd say 100% deserve to get the fine. I think 25 grand for what he makes as an NBA player is probably fair. Like if I think if I get fined from my work for calling someone a mofo on the phone or something like that, if I was to get fined £100, I'd probably say it's probably fair. And my net worth to KD's net worth, it probably equals about the same. So probably even less. But yeah, he completely deserved to get fined, and obviously correlation with the league rules. And I think Cammy's spot on. He won't care. It was really, really funny. I mean, I think he was caught out because there was a social media video kicking around, going viral, of him saying it really clearly, and someone's filmed it. And of course, when something like that goes around Twitter, the NBA always seem to need to get involved with that and make sure they look like they're doing the right thing. Like it's just a formality at the end of the day. I don't think it's against KD as a person. I don't think it would have happened to any other player in the league, in my opinion. And at the end of the day, what we enjoy about NBA games being live, and what we missed a lot about games that were in the bubble and in front of empty crowds, was you don't get that fan interaction. I think that's what separates basketball from the NFL, from baseball, not basketball, and like football over here and stuff like that, is you are further away, and that interaction with the fans, that turn back and just looking at a fan that's just yelled something at you, is part of the enjoyment of the live game and what makes it different. And yeah, KD won't bat an eyelid. We think it's hilarious. I'm sure probably the NBA thought it was quite funny as well, but they need to look like they're doing their job properly, and 25 grand's not going to scratch the surface of KD's wallet. So I think he'll be fine.
Nice. The one overarching feeling I had about it is, I'm sure I sort of think that the bloke that, because it wasn't unprompted. It wasn't he was just sort of running past and called this guy an MFer, but it was just so the guy said, "Durant, stop crying," and he told him to shut his ass up, mother effer. And part of me thinks that the bloke that was shouting at him and got shouted back, he was absolutely loving life off the back of that. So I understand that it's, a professional league, and it's like, it's the going rate. Like you say, it's like the going rate for that kind of misdemeanor. But I think almost that's a dream scenario for the bloke that shouted it. So it is a bit of a shame that, that's exactly what the bloke was looking for. And the league has gone back and done that. But yeah, I suppose I was a bit more bullish on this before you guys talked me down. So I think I've listened to reason, and yeah, it is probably fair. But I'm sure there's been players that have been fined 25 grand for punching each other rather than just swearing at a fan. But we shall see. But yeah, that was just something that caught my eye this week, which I thought was quite funny. But something a little bit more, so not super duper serious, but something that caught my attention. Do we have to start thinking about KD and Harden and their minutes that they're getting? Obviously, the rotations are somewhat settling down. I think we're in week 9 of the season now. So, I hope the time for experimentation is sort of over for this team. But KD and James Harden are playing a ton of minutes. So this week alone, bearing in mind both of these guys missed a game. KD played 40 minutes against Dallas, 38 minutes against Atlanta, and 41 against Detroit. Harden played 41 minutes against Dallas, 39 against Houston, and 40 against Atlanta. Simple question. Are we playing our superstars too much?
Yes and no is the answer. I think there's positives and negatives about the whole scenario. I think if you look at the positives, there's good positives in the fact that it shows that both guys are healthy and fully recovered from, you can only describe it as 2 horrendous hamstring injuries last year with how many games they missed. And to see them playing that much on the court, I would describe it as postseason stamina for how many minutes they're managing to rack up on the court. Shows that when we do get to the playoffs, they should be able to adjust to the demands of that style of basketball quite fluently. And I think we can be positive with that, because I think if you look back to last year, probably part of the reason that they did get injuries late on was due to the fact that their minutes were ramping up kind of during the season quite severely at times due to injuries. And that's probably a factor in why they got injured. But I mean, in terms of negatives, obviously, it shows that we aren't killing games off enough at the moment. I think you can probably count on one hand the games that we've won convincingly this year, and that's disappointing, obviously, with where we see ourselves at the moment. But I think a lot of that's down to, as you say, Matt, kind of experimentation and things. And obviously we have started games slow, and at times we have had to claw back games, which we've done, but it does show that we have to play these guys all the time. And I don't know if that's down to the fact that the supporting cast is nowhere near as good as it has been previously, potentially. And I'd say it's good. We've got a good depth, but at the same time, it's probably not as good as it has been. So obviously, there's playing them this many minutes. There's a obviously increased risk of injuries. Obviously, for the majority of their careers, barring the last few, obviously they have been durable guys, but they're obviously in their 30s now, and we all know as you get older, the risk of getting injured does increase. So potentially a slight reduction in minutes would be nice at this rate at the moment. But Steve Nash said it perfectly a few weeks ago. Do I play these guys less and lose more? And essentially that is the question you need to ask yourself at the moment. Do we have a poorer regular season by playing these guys less and potentially picking up a significant amount more of losses? But I think at the end of the day, if they're happy and we can keep them playing these level of minutes while they stay healthy and obviously reduce our chances of losing more games, then I think they'll continue to do what they're doing at the moment, where it seems to be like they're opting for rest nights instead of kind of in-game management. And it's working at the moment. Obviously, Harden's not been superb, but I think Kevin Durant's playing the best basketball of his career, so it's clearly working for him, and it will come for Harden. We've certainly seen glimpses of that recently, so I don't think they need to change it, but it would be probably slightly more easing for them as basketball players if they could see games off more and then maybe take the fourth quarter off just once a week. It would probably make a big difference.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can only ask to have any choice not to. When you've got these guys in your team, you play them. It's as simple as, I don't think anyone's going to argue with that. If they're fit and healthy, you've got to take advantage of that. The best ability is availability, and yeah, there's no point not maximising our winning chances by just not playing these guys because we're thinking far too ahead in the future. Like in sports all the time, they'll say, we're just thinking of the next game, we're just thinking of the next game. Nobody's ever really thinking too far ahead. It only seems to be fans that think, yeah, let's think about the playoffs. Of course, the players in the team and the organisation will be thinking of the playoffs, but we need to get there first. There's no point thinking about a potential championship matchup as a player when we're just past a quarter of the season. I think other teams would love to have at least one of these guys in their team. We've got 2 of them, and I mean, if Kyrie's there, we've got 3 world-class players in our team. And you could probably argue that it would be nice to see the load lifted on them a little bit. Obviously, if Kyrie came back, that definitely would happen. You could then do what we kind of seen at times last season where it was two playing, one resting or whatever, kind of when they were all available. We absolutely over-rely on KD and Harden, but who can blame us? They're two of the best players the NBA's seen. So, yeah, every team would be in the exact same position as us. And like Aidan says, if they're happy playing that, yeah, what are we to say otherwise? If you don't play KD and Harden, let's be honest, you'd probably say we're a team that scrapes the playoffs. Maybe I'm being really, really harsh here, but you take the superstars out of this team, well, there's not much to this team. So yeah, I'm sure we'll see these guys continue to play plenty of minutes. Maybe as the season wears on, if Kyrie returns, minutes might change a bit. But yeah, if it's not broke, why fix it?
Yeah, nice. I think that's. I love the quote from KD that he said when it got raised to him. He said, "I know people may be concerned about my minutes, and I got injured before, and all this extra shit, but we'll figure that out if I get there. Right now, I want to play basketball." And then he said about his increased minutes, he say, "I might play 48 tomorrow, just cause give you something to talk about." Which I think is just like, that's just KD in it. Just absolute, just giving the media what they want. Yeah, perfectly covered by you lads. Would be nice if they didn't play all the time, but they're absolutely balling. And there we are. And I think that I've lost the fear. I remember last season when KD had just come back from his Achilles, I had the fear. Every time he went down, I was like, oh, Jesus, he's gone again. Oh, he's made out of glass. But now I'm like, nah, he's just on MVP form. So yeah, why would you take him out? It's a nice problem to have. But that's the Nets news. That is the everything we got going on from Nets World. Obviously, we have just seen as we've gone live that Paul Millsap has entered COVID protocol. So he's going to be not suiting up for the next couple of weeks, I see. But as memory serves me correctly, he has been away from the team for personal reasons. So selfishly, obviously, we do hope that Paul Millsap is all good, that his and his family and everyone that he's in close contact with is happy and healthy and all that kind of good stuff. But selfishly, he has been away from the team. So hopefully that means he hasn't been cross-pollinating with Nets players, and it's going to be a nice little incident. We're not going to turn into the next Chicago Bulls, but we shall see. But time to recap some games. So cast your minds back to Wednesday, the 8th, game number 24 in the season, and a big fat dub to start the week with. The Nets beating the Dallas Mavericks 102-99. Cammy, what did you make of this one?
I just want to celebrate the comeback we made in this one. At one point, we trailed by no less than 17 points, and in years gone by, this would have been game over. And like we always famously say, it's time to go to bed in the Discord. And more recently, that's kind of turned things round, but that was always kind of brought on by us going down a lot, and a lot of the time it was game over. And yeah, it's just nice to see this Nets team rally around and get the dub on the road, and also start the week just gone by in the best way possible. Steve Nash, I think, summed it up perfectly post-game, saying there were times it wasn't great and it wasn't smooth, but when it really counted, we cleaned some things up. And yeah, we went into the fourth trailing by 11, and for us to have any chance of winning this one, we really, really had to shut the Mavs down, and we done exactly that. Limited them to just 13 points in the fourth quarter. They had just 4 of 21 shots from the field land, and yeah, great teams, I think, always find a way to win when things maybe don't go as you expected them to, and yeah, that's what we done, and it certainly says a lot about the character of this team, and bodes well for upcoming games. That there's going to be other games where we're behind. We've had famous comebacks in the past, and yeah, it's always good when you can get a comeback win. So yeah, delighted that we managed to get this one over the line and start the week with a win.
Yeah, I mean, the Nets were just really, really good defensively in the second half, and it's something that we have seen a lot recently, that they tend to pick up their game in the third and fourth quarter, where they just seem to lock down, and it has been a huge impact on us winning games recently. And I think one of the things we were most excited for with getting Nicolas Clarkson back was just how good a defender he can be when he is switched on to the other team's ball handler. And in this game against the Mavs, we saw Clarks probably do it for the first time this season, where he done such a good job on Luka Doncic, who's one of the league's best ball handlers. And he only played 20 minutes in this game, but Clarks was a team high on the plus minus with 9, but it did mainly come at the defensive end for him. And in particular, there was 3 straight Luka Doncic possessions in the third, and Doncic was obviously switched on to Clarks, and he was unsuccessful on all 3. And obviously that's just a minute of basketball, but those 3 possessions ultimately allowed the Nets to begin to make that comeback, that 17-point comeback that we're talking about. And it got them into the front foot going into the fourth, and it was just fantastic to see. Obviously, the thing that was doing the rounds was that after one particular possession, Claxton got right up in Luka Doncic's face, and it ultimately led to Luka just shoving him, and it resulted in a technical. And I really liked Clax's quote when he was asked about it after the game. He was asked, what caused that altercation? He said, I didn't say anything to him. I think I kind of got in his face, and he took offense to it and gave me a little shove. I like that, though. That keeps me going. That's good. And I just love that energy from him, that he just takes that nastiness from other guys and he just uses it as ammo. And he's just that type of guy where he just likes to piss people off. And I've always been a fan of that type of player when they're on your team. So, yeah, he's back and he's better than ever in my eyes. And I've loved having him back in the rotation.
Yeah, it's nice to see Clax back. I was just trying to find. He also had a. I'm trying to find the quote, but he had some sort of mad quote on Instagram that I'm trying to find about. But it just speaks to that sort of mentality that he's got. But he basically called himself a monster on Instagram, and I was just like, for a guy that's like in his 3rd year, that's still sort of semi finding his feet in the league. Just to have that kind of confidence and just be so, it's just confident. I don't even think it's arrogance. I think it's just complete and utter self-confidence in himself. I just absolutely love seeing it. I can't put my fingers on the direct quote at the moment, but I tweeted that out a couple of days ago. But yeah, just Clax is great, man. Like when he's good, he's really good. And it was really annoying to see that kind of, was it the first 3 games before he went down with mono, so that he was just not good. But yeah, as you say, he's back and he looks himself. And yeah, especially on that defensive end, he's a very, I think he's in like the top whatever percent of switchable bigs as well. Like he can just switch onto any. He's as comfortable guarding 4s and 5s as he is, Trae Young or whatever that. But we'll get onto that later. I just wanted to, on this Mavs game, I just wanted to call out James Johnson. His sideburns may be terrible, but don't tell him I said that. But it was just a pretty good all-round performance on this one. I think what we've done, like on the last few podcasts, is we and obviously we're a Nets podcast, and the best player in the world plays for our team, so we do talk about KD and Harden and stuff a lot. I remember at the beginning of the season we spoke about Patty Mills a lot. Obviously he's cooled off a little bit, so I'm trying to find different avenues to talk about and different highlights and stuff. But James Johnson was just had himself a nice game, man. Like a pretty all-round performance. 12 points, shooting an efficient 5 of 7, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, 1 steal, 1 block. Did have 5 fouls, but he was still a +5 on the game. Obviously scored those clutch free throws to beat the Knicks. And he's definitely like sort of slowly cementing himself in this rotation. He's had a couple of starts over the last couple of weeks. And he's obviously played his way ahead of Blake and Paul Millsap. But yeah, from a period of time where it felt like the dominoes were still falling, and we didn't quite know who we were or what the rotation was looking. I'm getting a good feeling about James Johnson when he turns up. It's a feel not to put him in such bad company, and I know this name's going to come up later as well, but he's a bit like, at the moment it feels like a bit like TLC, where he had a good few games where he'd just shoot lights out and then that was amazing. At this moment James Johnson feels like he'll have 2 good games and then 2 real just anonymous games, and then 2 good games again. So that's one to look out for. But it's just something that struck me while watching this Dallas game. Moving on from the Dallas game, and unfortunately, we had to travel to Houston, and the Nets got a rare loss, getting beaten 114-104. Aidan, was it due to a lack of firepower?
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, last week you guys both had this down as a loss, I think, and obviously due to our rotten record on back-to-backs. I was a bit more confident going into this one, but when I saw that they decided to rest Kevin Durant and LaMarcus Aldridge on the same night, I just wasn't confident at all. And I'd say this was a bad decision by Steve Nash, and I feel it really should have been a situation where they staggered the rests for both guys across the 2 nights. I think we would have been much more successful if we at least had one of them in both games. But I just look at the team at the moment. We've really only got 5 reliable scorers in the team that can play, and it's Kevin Durant, James Harden, Patty Mills, LaMarcus Aldridge, and obviously Cam Thomas now. And only having 5 kind of reliable scorers isn't great in the modern NBA. I'd say most teams usually have 7 or 8, and to rest 2 of them in the one night and bring that down to 3 is borderline crazy to me. And I do kind of hope that it was a situation where they decided to rest maybe LaMarcus Aldridge on the day, just down to how he was feeling. Because if this was planned, I think it was a big mistake by the Nets. And yeah, you can look at the numbers and it tells the whole story really. Outside of Harden, Mills, and Cam Thomas, we only had 1 made 3-pointer on the night, and it was David Jr. who did look really good. So I was really impressed with how he looked in his stint on that game. But in general, it was just a really kind of paint clogging night, and with just really little room to maneuver, which is disappointing against one of the poorer teams in the league and one of the poorer defensive teams in the league, that you let them off that much by them just having to sit in the paint all night and just clog the defense, which they done in pretty much every possession. And I don't think it's a surprise that James Harden didn't go off in this one, obviously with that type of supporting cast that he had. I don't think it suits his type of game. He needs space to drive, and he needs freedom to take threes, and obviously he's getting double, triple teamed on every possession. But yeah, just a strange decision in my opinion for the Nets, and I do hope that they learn from it. Obviously, we're playing another back-to-back this week at the end, and I think they just need to stagger it, and be it just letting one guy have a night off, because if you take 2 guys out of the equation, it just doesn't work. And hopefully they learn from it and it doesn't happen again.
Yeah, I mean, the resting of these guys, like someone who had fallen off the face of the earth, return to the rotation, and that man being Blake Griffin. After 6 straight DNPs, he returned off the bench, and I mean, he had an all right night on his return. It wasn't maybe the performance we were expecting of him. In 13 minutes, he gave us 7 points on 3 of 4 shooting and grabbed 3 rebounds as well. Like I say, it's not what we need from Blake, and especially when we're needing folk to score the ball. He didn't really do that. Granted, he wasn't on the court for that long, but I think the main thing is he's back playing. We know what Blake's capable of. Yes, this season hasn't went how he or us would have liked it to have went, but it's still a guy who was a fantastic player back in his day, and still certainly has something to give, as evidenced by certainly last season and some small stints this season. So hopefully he'll kind of come back for a real point to prove this week. He's kind of stayed ready whilst out. Steve Nash was very commendable of the kind of attitude he's shown, professional attitude. So when he could have so easily kicked up a fuss, there was that video of him doing all the extra runs and stuff after one of the practices. So he's clearly someone who he's not like getting dropped completely derail him. He knows that he's probably got to do better. He doesn't need us telling him that or anyone else. And I just hope that the timeouts let him kind of re-examine things, look over why he got dropped in the first place, and with a bit of luck he can come back and we can see him at his best soon, especially if we're going to start resting players that bit more now we're a bit further into the season. If Blake can offer something a bit more, it takes the load off for someone else who's going to ultimately be taking the load off of one of the guys rested. So yeah, it's going to need to be a team effort on these kind of rest nights for guys. And if Blake can step up and help out, that's going to be a benefit both to the Nets and obviously the guys getting rested, because it takes a lot of pressure off of them.
Is it me, or is it a bit weird that we've absolutely stank the place out from free, but we've just got Kyle Korver on as an assistant coach? Like, if you've got one thing that you're good at doing is he's like an all-world, like all-time 3-point specialist, you'd have thought that, we've brought him on to get his know-how in that. But for some reason, the Nets, outside, the handful of players, the Nets spacing has been absolutely god-awful. So do better, Kyle Korver. All right. But yeah, it was just weird thing that just sort of came to me. But yeah, it was a bit of failure to launch, as I'm sure is a pun that's been done a million times with Harden on his return to Houston. We were hoping for a revenge game of sorts, with this being James's old stomping ground, but it kind of wasn't to be. Went 4 of 16 from the floor, 3 of 12 from free, but got 14 of his points at the Toyota Center free throw line. Obviously, somewhere he's very comfortable, because that's basically where he spent most of his Rockets career before the rule change. Did have 11 rebounds, 8 assists, 2 steals. So if you look at the box score, it is weird to say that he didn't really get going. But without, as you say, Aidan, without KD and without LaMarcus Aldridge, he's not only our main option, but sort of our only option. I just thought that with this Rockets team particularly, they're super young, super hungry, on this kind of winning streak after losing, 15 in a row to start the season. It just felt like, obviously we've said about the back-to-backs and stuff like that, but it felt like just a character win, whereas the Nets were kind of getting a bit more tired and kind of outgunned. They were just out-hustled and out-hearted, I think, with this one, because this Rocket team, their dressing room at the moment just must be absolutely bumping with just being on a roll and finally winning after all that losing. So it just felt like momentum and stuff was just kind of overrode the Nets on this second night of back-to-back again, which was a bit of a shame. But we needed to bounce back, and bounce back we did. Took us to Saturday, 12:30 UK time. The Nets got back in the W column, beating the Atlanta Hawks 113 to 105. What do you make of this one?
So on the week that Blake Griffin showed that he was still alive, Bruce Brown also showed that he was still alive. Bruce, a fan favourite of BK to UK, has been rather quiet in the last few games and weeks, really. But in this one, he showed, at least to me, that he's still a more than capable role player on this team. 15 points on the night, which was, after a wee bit of research, more than he'd got in his previous 4-game points totals combined, and a total of 5 rebounds, 4 of which were offensive rebounds. And it was probably this that impressed me more than his points, if I'm honest. There was a YouTube video kind of showing all his possessions and stuff. He spends so much time in the paint for a guy that's much smaller than guys who traditionally be in the paint. He doesn't let that size bother him. We know that he's got so much energy. He's willing to give his all and try for everything. And he done really well to just get himself in the paint and contest for every ball. He didn't win all of them, but he still maybe done enough to make the other guy miss it, and one of our guys picked it up. Or just, he was a pest, I think would be a good way to describe him. Got a lot of his points in the paint as well. And like I say, for a guy that small to be doing so well in the paint's impressive. I think 10 of the 15 points came in about an 8 or 9 minute stretch for him. So, I mean, it shows that Bruce is a guy that can certainly contribute. He's maybe not done it as much this season as we maybe seen last season from him. He's had a few kind of 13, 14 point games, but then kind of fell off a cliff lately. And another thing I noted was that he sunk a wide open free. You obviously mentioned a poor 3-point shooting. It was just nice to see a 3-point shot go down, especially from one of not the usual suspects, if you like. So, it's looking far too much into this, but it's just nice to have another person who can shoot the free ball. Maybe that's what Kyle Korver's done. He's turned Bruce Brown into a 3-point shooting demon and just completely neglected everyone else. that may explain a recent 3-point struggles. He's neglected them, but Bruce Brown, if we just unleash him from free, will be winning games by hundreds.
I'm sure he must be like 99.99999% 3-point percentage on that left wing, because anytime he seems to be open there, it seems to always go in, and it's always like in front of the opposing bench, and he just absolutely loves it as well. So, but yeah, talking about a guy that's had a good game, I'm going to talk about a guy that really, really did not have a good game in this one, and it's no secret that TLC took like a lot of flack from Nets fans the last few years, and not all of it was deserved. I should add that, but I don't think any Nets fan thought that you'd be starting on an NBA team this year. Never mind the Eastern Conference finalists, the Atlanta Hawks. And even with all the injuries they've had, I didn't think TLC would manage to get into their starting lineup. But yeah, he obviously had an opportunity in this one when facing the Nets to prove a lot of people wrong. I mean, the Nets front office being one of them. Obviously, they chose not to re-sign him, but it must have been one of the worst performances from a player playing against his old team that I've ever seen in my life, and it's probably one of the worst performances he's had in his career. And I'm not joking; it was really, really bad. But it started quite brightly for him. Obviously, he was matched up with Kevin Durant, which is never an easy task, and he was actually defending him quite well. He forced a turnover, he even managed to get a steal, but it was just all downhill from there. KD was just cooking him on every single possession from the second quarter onwards. KD just almost instinctively knew when TLC was going to foul him. He's probably played against him in practice 100 times, and he just seemed to know when he was going to make mistakes, and he was capitalizing on it. And TLC was getting really, really frustrated. And on the offensive end, he wasn't better. He was 0 from 3 from a guy who was kind of a 3-point specialist at one point, maybe. He was 0 from 8 from the field, and he fluffed one of the easiest layups of the night in the fourth. It would have tied the game, and it essentially lost the game for the Hawks. So he had 0 points and he had 6 fouls. So if anyone else can find a player that's had that stat line, then I would be impressed, because that's hard to do. And yeah, a forgettable night from the Prince of Paris. All the best for the rest of the season, TLC.
It still is City, as that GIF will always tell us. But one little note that I did want to just bring up was the kind of to in and throw in that KD and Trae Young kind of had throughout the game. There was a particular nice little bit back and forth. Obviously, these two have a really, really long history. There's that photo that always gets round where Trae Young is an actual child going up to see KD as a fan and all this kind of stuff. But it looked like KD was enjoying sort of taking the assignment to guard Trae Young. And there was a particular sequence, I'd forgotten at what point, it was quite late in the game, where Trae Young kind of gets the ball in transition. I think he almost even gets a steal or an interception or a tip pass or something. But he's kind of, running down the court. KD gets the chase down block, then dribbles up the floor just to bury his signature elbow, which is, the crowd was absolutely bumping, even though it was a road game. And then the Hawks come down the other end of the floor, and KD fights over a screen to stay on the assignment of Trae Young, doesn't switch. And they stumble together, and Trae Young pushes KD and squares up to him. I mean, fair play for Trae Young to stepping up on KD, who's literally got a foot on him, I should imagine. Because if Trae Young's bigger than 6'1", then I am calling bullshit on that, because he's a little fella. And KD, as we know, ain't 6'10". He's bigger than that. So it was. I think it was almost just shithousery, and I think. In terms of Trae Young, I think maybe because he's seen him from a kid, he hasn't got that kind of. If you'd never met KD and you're coming into the league, you're like, oh my god, that's KD. But where maybe they've got this weird relationship that's been going on for years, maybe he's not as starstruck as other people would be going up against him. So he's happy to jaw, he's happy to push, and all this kind of stuff. So that was just something that caught my eye, and it was just, and there's this weird bit of the game where KD's just sort of lost the use of his arms seemingly and just kind of nuzzles himself on Trae Young, which again, being a foot shorter than him is just a really weird thing to do. He looked like a kind of a pissed up bloke in a club trying to like crack onto a bird or something, but it was very, very strange, but entertaining nonetheless. And just finally for this slate of games, fourth and final game from the season, rounding out the week with an incredible performance on Sunday. The Nets traveled to Detroit and beat the Pistons 116-104. And yeah, a pretty good night on offense.
Yeah, I mean, on a night where Kevin Durant deserves to take every single headline about that performance, but I'll let Cammy come on to that shortly. And rightly so, he was incredible. I just wanted to just take a moment to appreciate how much Cam Thomas has developed in such a short space of time. And once again, he was the leading scorer off the bench against the Pistons. He looked superb all night, scoring 13 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, and a steal while shooting 50% from the field. From a rookie, it's just incredible numbers. And we obviously can't say enough about Cam. He's just such a pure scorer. And he just is so confident already. And it's just beautiful to see a guy like that at that age, so confident on the court. And obviously, when we first kind of got excited about Cam was obviously when he claimed the Summer League co-MVP title. And we were just also excited about having a rookie to develop over the next few years. Obviously, he was seen as a luxury at that point. We knew the amount of talent that we had with Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, James Harden, a ton of other guys. So we didn't really assume that he was going to get straight in and he'd have to build himself up. But circumstances have changed. We don't need to talk about how this year's went so far. It's not been kind to the Nets. But we're at a point in the season now where Cam is no longer a luxury and he is a necessity. And I think we need a scoring every single night. But he's excelling in that role and he just seems to get more confident. And more importantly, he's getting even better. He just seems to be more smooth, just more NBA ready every single night. And I just think he epitomizes what the NBA is all about. You kind of come in as a guy that didn't draft highly. You go over to the G League, you put in performances there, you get your opportunity, and he grabbed it with both hands. And I think Nets Daily summed it up perfectly in it was either a tweet or an article the other night where he said, there's just not a chance in hell he'll ever go back to Long Island now. He's too talented now and he's too important to this Nets team. And I just was thinking this morning, obviously the news about Kyrie Irving coming out and there's a bit of hope that he's coming back. One of the things that was in my mind is you let a guy like Cam Thomas go into the lab and shoot some hoops with Kyrie Irving. You just need to watch him become one of the most exciting youngsters in the league because we can see already how much of a sponge this guy is when he's learning off guys like Kevin Durant and James Harden. You get someone like Kyrie Irving in there and watch out because I just think it will just bring his game to another level. So, yeah, Kevin Durant was obviously the main guy on this night, but when you've got someone like Cam Thomas who can contribute and like that, it's an absolute blessing. So, yeah, a fantastic night overall for the Nets.
As Aidan says, the man that will get all the headlines for us from was Kevin Durant, and we couldn't possibly talk about this game without talking about this special performance from the best player on the planet. 51 points, 7 rebounds, and 9 assists. He took a lot of shots, 31 to be exact. It was the most shots he's taken all season, and he sunk 16 of them, including 5 3-pointers. So, yeah, for all our struggles from 3-point land, KD done all right against the Pistons, and if this is what happens when KD gets to take 11 more shots than he does on average, then sign me up for more of this because it was a masterclass in basketball from KD. When you've got a guy who very nearly outscored the entire Pistons starting 5, it speaks volumes. Yes, it's the Pistons and the Pistons are terrible, but to nearly outscore 5 guys yourself, especially I don't care what level you're playing at, it goes for any kind of sport. If you can score lots of points, there's definitely something about you, and it goes without saying there's definitely something there with KD. I think he's an all right player.
He's not bad, is he?
Yeah, he's not bad. Yeah, like there's just no words. We say this every single week, and he puts in performance after performance, and we're like, yeah, this is an amazing performance. But I mean, this was so close to being a Nets franchise record. He was so close to a career personal best. And one thing he did manage to achieve, though, was the NBA best points in a single game. He beat Steph Curry's 50 points. So, I mean, that's one thing I can celebrate. I'm sure he'll maybe be kicking himself. He couldn't have just grabbed a few more to get that franchise record and that personal best. But if anything, that gives himself something to work towards. He knows what he's capable of. And again, it just goes to show KD hasn't lost a step. He's just got better. He's playing the best basketball of his career. And this is another reason why we have to play him if he's available. If he can play 48 minutes, play him 48 minutes. If he's happy doing that, yeah, let's keep this going, because I could watch this all day, all night. And if he can do this, nobody's going to complain.
Yeah, it's nice. I'm just waiting for that, because I think he's the 6th ever player to score 50 with 3 different franchises. Obviously doing it for OKC, did it for the Golden State Warriors, and now he's done it for the Nets. D. Will still holds the record for most points as a net with 57. And you think that's just going to go. Over the next couple of years, that's going to go. But yeah, what a guy. And to kind of tie up your 2 points, I remember seeing video of KD at the end of the game. You know, flashed up on the screen that he scored 51 and whatever, and he's just high-fiving Cam Thomas going, that's light work, which is just speaks to the guy, especially talking about his minutes and all this kind of stuff, where, you know, he's in his 30s, coming towards the end of his prime, but still KD, the best KD you've seen ever, talking to the next generation, saying that it's light work, and, you know, you might be the next generation, but I'm still Kevin Durant. You still know my name. So yeah, wicked to see. Yeah, it was just really nice. I think it was the thing that I've got in my notes is that we just, again, although it was all the headlines will be KD putting on a clinic and scoring 51, we turned on the clamps again in the 4th, just like we did in Dallas. The Nets only let Detroit score 13 points in the whole 4th quarter, scored 30 of their own. The Pistons went 4 of 18 from the field in the 4th quarter, 2 of 9 from 3. Same as we did in Dallas, where we only let them score 13 points in the 4th. And we kind of touched on this earlier, but it feels like over the years, Nets fans have been so used to seeing these kind of close games crumble away or sort of get away from us. It's strange to be feeling more confident about us kind of putting the pressure on and actually getting a result. And as you say, it's the Pistons. So it's not exactly a huge achievement given where both teams are in the standings. But like you were saying about the line in the Discord chat where we're up late and we're getting battered, and it's like, you know what, lads, I'm going to sleep. And that tricking the basketball gods into the Nets, turning it round. There's none of that anymore. It's just like we're actually, you know, we're giving ourselves even later nights and even grayer hair and even deeper wrinkles by actually staying up and believing. So it's nice that it gives us hope. And yeah, it's just a wicked time to be a Nets fan, man. I love basketball so much. I've had a bit of a scratchy throat, so I'm on the Scotch, but so I don't know where that I love basketball so much came from, but it might be from that, but we shall see. Moving swiftly on, we're going to look ahead to the week ahead of us. So as we had all last week was on the road, all this week is back at the Clees, back at Barclays Centre. So we're going to start off on all these games are at 12:30 UK time. Wednesday, we face the Raptors. Friday, we face the Sixers. Then we wait till Sunday to face the Magic before another dreaded back-to-back on Monday where we face the Nuggets. Anything jump out to you guys on those upcoming fixtures?
Probably the fact we're at home, and I think you could, well, certainly from my point of view, I'm less concerned about the kind of fixture pile up at the end of this coming week. Three games in 4 days is a lot for any team to manage, but it's certainly more manageable when you've not got to travel the length and breadth of the country, as we kind of need to do in this situation if we're needing to go to Denver or to Philly or to Toronto or whatever. So we're managing like it's worked out quite nicely. It's still going to be very, very tough. Don't get me wrong. I've just got a feeling about this week. For whatever reason, my predictions I've worked out all right in the past few weeks after starting off really poorly. I've managed to claw it back. So something's clearly been in the water I'm drinking, and my predictions are going all right. So I'm going to go bold and say a week full of wins, a full week at home. Let's just smash this week. We've already beaten the Raptors, we've beaten the Sixers, and we've beaten the Magic twice already this season. So it goes to show we know what we're doing against these guys. Let's beat them again. And we've not faced the Nuggets yet, but we do have a good recent history against them. Currently on a three game winning streak against them. And granted, a lot has changed in between even the first game and probably the last game with the Nuggets. I still fancy ourselves to beat the Nuggets, despite them having, obviously, Nikola Jokic available to them, one of the best players in the league. But yeah, I'm going to say we're going to stretch that winning streak of the Nuggets to 4 games and pick up a total of 4 wins this coming week.
Love that.
That's weird because usually I'm the happy clapper and Cammy's the pessimist. But I've actually got a worse record this week than Cammy, and that must be the first time that's happened in a long time. But I've got us going 3-1 this week, so it's not a terrible week. But I just think you look at those 4 games, and that's a tough week. Obviously, aside from the Magic game, that's 3 teams that have given us the fits over the years, and I'm just not sure. I'd be really impressed if we won all 4, but obviously without Joe Harris and Kyrie Irving, and obviously without Paul Millsap now, who's obviously been playing minutes, it's going to be difficult for the Nets to take all 4. But I'd love to see it. And I think the loss will actually come on Wednesday against the Raptors. It's just seemed to be a team that have our number, and I don't even think they're anything special. I just don't think they're a good matchup for this Nets team, especially a Nets team that doesn't have excellent spacing at the moment. I can see them taking the win over us. And the rest of the week looks pretty good. Obviously, the Sixers looking much better, but still not there. And I think they need to hit a home run in this impending Ben Simmons trade, which obviously the news about that came out at the same time as Kyrie from Shams this morning. So, and obviously the unofficial trade season opens up this week. So who knows? You never know what we're going to see. It might be around about this game, which should be quite nice. The Magic, obviously not as easy as it looks. They gave us a really good game the other week. The Nets just seem to be struggling against the young and hungry teams. They just don't seem to be a great matchup for this Nets team. It used to be the opposite when we were the young, hungry team playing against these seasoned vets. But now it's kind of gone the other way around, and we're having to play against these teams. But yeah, I can't see us losing that one unless they decide to flip the rest that they do on the back-to-back, and they decide to maybe rest guys for that one. But obviously, Cammy mentioned that's us at home now for 4 straight games. There's a good chance that they maybe don't rest anyone at all in these ones, just because they do have the luxury of obviously their own beds and things. So yeah, I think we'll beat the Nuggets as well, just because they're not playing great at the moment. They're 13-13. Obviously, probably by far the toughest matchup of the week. That front court of Aaron Gordon, Nikola Jokic is certainly one to be feared by a Nets team that doesn't have a true centre. But I don't know. I can see us just ending that horrible streak of back-to-backs at the moment, just purely because they're so roughed up with injuries, and we might hit a lucky break. But for a game like that, the key factor is going to be if James Harden and Kevin Durant both play and both have really strong nights. So yeah, it's not an easy week, and if we can go 3-1, I'll be delighted. If we go 4-0, I'll be laughing.
Love that. I'm gonna. So as it stands, we're all on 20 correct guesses out of 27. So that's not bad. I'm gonna unfortunately, I'm gonna believe in this back-to-back curse. And I'm going to say we're going to have 3 Ws. We're going to beat the Raptors, the Sixers, and the Magic. But again, we're just going to fall flat on this second night of the back-to-back, and we're going to lose to the Nuggets. But it's okay because Nikola Jokic is on my fantasy team. So he can have a good night. That's the only person I don't mind beating the Nets at the moment. As long as they're on my fantasy team, it's all good. But yeah, so that's what I think for that. So we should actually see a bit of movement in these pick'em scores. But yeah, we shall see. Let us know if you're listening along what you think, how we're going to get on the week ahead. But talking to the week ahead, obviously it is the 18th? No, what is it? The 13th of December today. Next weekend is Christmas, or very, very close to Christmas. So we're having a week off, maybe a couple of weeks off, because we all want to go spend time with our families around Christmas time. I hope you guys have a lovely Christmas too. So that's us, but that's all we have time for today. Thanks to Aidan and Cammy as ever, and to all you guys for listening and watching along with us on YouTube and Twitch. If you like what we do, the best thing you can do to help us is like, rate, and review the podcast. Subscribe to us on YouTube and Twitch. Share the episode on social media. Any help we can get there is really, really appreciated. Support us as well by treating yourself to some merch. The link to that can be found on our link in our Twitter bio. So make sure you go check that out as well. And we won't see you next week. As I say, we'll see you in a week or a couple of weeks after Christmas in 2022, when hopefully we'll have a lot more net stuff to chat about. But until then, thanks for coming through, and we'll see you next time.